everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogues, chats, stats, and fun facts season preview. Today we're talking about Chelo Weigandt, who is coming off his first year with the Herons and is ready for year number 2. First thoughts when I mentioned Chelo Weigandt for this series.
He's back. He's back with a bang. We didn't expect him to be back once Tata Martino left, but it looks like the club trusts him. He is the number one right back in the team right now, and we have him for another season. So we're stuck with him in that right back position. Let's see what he can bring and whether he can elevate his game.
He's coming off a pretty big year, actually, for Inter Miami. 32 games played, 31 starts, 2,800 minutes, 10 yellow cards, 3 assists, 0 goals. He was the main right back last season, and it felt consistently like he was consistent. That was, I think, the way we described him. I don't think there was a ton of high moments, but aside from a weak stretch during the Leagues Cup, he was pretty solid throughout the season. I think he provided stability going both directions, and I think he was what Inter Miami kind of expected him to be on a weekly basis. The fun fact is that he came in on March 30th, and Inter Miami played, that was his first game against NYCFC. He played 32 of the next 38 games until the end of the season. He started 31 of those. And so of the 7 games he didn't start, only 2 of them were he healthy and available. That means 31 out of 33 games where he could have started, he did start. Tata Martino chose to play this player consistently, and regardless of performance, regardless of team fit, regardless of scheme, regardless of formation, Chelo Weigandt was in the lineup basically every available opportunity. But that was also Tata Martino who brought him in. They decided to bring him back with Mascherano, but it's a new year, new coach, new system. Where are we at with Chelo Weigandt in 2025?
Listen, you can't fault him for his availability. He rarely got injured, and he was available to play whenever possible, right? As you mentioned, 31 out of 32 games that he could start, he did start. That's insane level of consistency, at least in terms of availability. So good for him for that. And the term I like to use is steady Eddie. That's what he is. You know what you're going to get from him. It's going to be a good performance. It's going to be an average performance. It's not phenomenal. It's never been phenomenal. I don't think he had a game last season where I could say, wow, Chelo Weigandt really shone.
Did he even have one moment?
No, I don't think so, honestly. He had a couple of really good shots on target in some games, but they never amounted to anything. And at this point in time, you've come to expect exactly what you get from him. And that is just consistently good football that won't set anybody's world on fire, which is fine. He does a good job. He does what he's supposed to do, and he comes out of it with a decent performance every single time. So overall, I think he's good for the locker room. He has set himself a place on this team, in this roster. Seems like the coaches like him, and there must have been a conversation behind the scenes whether they want to bring him back in, and it seemed like it was positive, obviously, because now he's here. And yeah, steady Eddie, that's what I'm going to go with. That's my tagline for steady Eddie Chelo Weigandt.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good tagline. The 2 games he didn't start when he was available were September 21st against NYCFC and April 6th against Colorado. Both of those games were games that Inter Miami rotated heavily in because we played 3 games in a week. The other 5 games that he didn't play in were he was either suspended or he had a 2-game injury for one point during the season. So he's available. He does get more yellow cards than you would have thought just based on your memory. So he does get a few suspensions for accumulation. But for the most part, I think you're right. Steady Eddie, solid, but never even really good performances, in my opinion. And so I think there's a conversation about whether it's good enough. When you first saw him play, and when I first saw him play, I think there was this sense that maybe we have something special here. He had a nice cross and one of that early, I think maybe his first performance with Inter Miami, that we thought to ourselves, that's not something DeAndre Yedlin could have done. And it didn't really pick up from there. We thought maybe he could have a chance to be the best right back Inter Miami's ever had. I think you maybe made a statement to that extent.
I don't remember saying that.
But He's going to come back in 2025 now, having really only been solid for much of 2024. Is there a step up for him? And is he good enough to be the guy on a week to week basis for Inter Miami? I think that's the big question with Chelo Weigandt.
Yeah, I think this is a very important conversation to have about Chelo Weigandt, whether he can be that guy who we see on the team sheet and are like, okay, yeah, he's going to really do something in that right back spot. As a second choice right back, I would have actually really liked him because what he does is he does the good things good and then doesn't put too many wrong errors here and there, right? He had a very short stretch of games during the Leagues Cup run where you could genuinely tell that we as fans were frustrated with his performances. But other than that, he does what he's supposed to do. And that for a second choice right back would have been absolutely phenomenal. And I would go as far to say that he could potentially challenge that first right back challenge for that first right back spot. But I think throughout last season, he never really cemented himself as a right back player or as a fullback who you look at and you're like, this is a player that brings that X factor and can make things happen when we are in trouble. And that for me is the problem because you have Jordi Alba on the other side of the pitch who can basically flip the switch and change the game in the blink of an eye. But Chelo Weigandt would never really do that. His defensive abilities are better than his offensive capabilities. And that was something that I was surprised with towards the end of the season because when we brought him, I thought he would be more offensively adventurous and would contribute a little bit more to that offensive output. I think the way Tata Martino wanted to play exacerbated some of his offensive inabilities, and he wasn't able to contribute too many assists. But this is a new team, it's a new setup under Mascherano. You can tell, at least from the first game that we've played in the preseason, that he likes to play with a 4-4-2 block, at least when we're off the ball. That's going to suit Chelo Weigandt. He's going to be defensively really solid. And it's all going to come down to what the coaching staff asks him to do. Can he take that next step? I hope. But I've not seen enough from him in terms of that X factor for me to actually have a positive opinion on this and be like, he has a ceiling that he can break. I think this is what we're going to get from him, and we have to be happy with that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. This is going to be his age 25 season. And so I think the idea that he has some explosive potential that we haven't seen yet is probably not there. And I don't think you see the snippets of it that make you think that it's there. I kind of came around to what I'm about to say towards the end of last season, where when we brought Chelo Weigandt in, he maybe was the best right back Inter Miami's ever had. I think you could have that debate with him and DeAndre Yedlin and feel comfortable on either side of the argument. And yet, he was the worst of Inter Miami's 11 starters. And it felt like, man, if we could upgrade anywhere, it would be at this right back spot. And then Ian Frey came in and he was explosive, but it was never really given a real run. We're going to bring in Gonzalo Lujan, who has a chance to play some minutes there. So there will be more competition for him this season. He's also not a guy that this coach promised minutes to, right? That was part of the recruiting pitch to bring Chelo to Miami last year. Tata Martino came in and said, we're going to make you the starting right back. And he liked that. And Tata had this thing where he was going to stick with his promises unless it came to the most important games of the season. That's why Julian Gressel got so many minutes. That's why Chelo Weigandt got so many minutes. That's why Federico Redondo got so many minutes. He promised these players that they were going to start consistently, and they did. Mascherano hasn't made any of those promises. And so he's in a position to say, Chelo, you're going to have to earn every single minute you get. Now, is that going to bring out the best in Chelo? Is there a better in Chelo? Or is he just a guy that's going to give you a steady 6 out of 10 every single week? Like you said, that is exactly what you want from your number 2 right back, is a guy that can fill in whenever necessary and give you a solid, steady performance that's not going to cost you dearly in big games. But this is a team with huge ambitions. Can he be the guy that steps up and really fills that role in 2025? He's going to have bigger competition. You mentioned it, a new formation. He's not going to have Messi in front of him directly. There seems like there's going to be another player on that right side. He'll have a little bit more help. He'll have less responsibility going forward, more time and patience to be defensively sound. So these things could really affect his game in a positive way. But I think we're talking about pushing the needle from 6 out of 10 to 6.5, maybe 7 out of 10s. I don't know if there's really a 9 out of 10 ceiling in him at this level. And so I'm happy to have him on the roster, but he's not a guy that I'm going to be consistently pining to have game time week in and week out if he's not performing. And if Ian Frey comes back, if Gonzalo Lujan comes in and they are performing well in that right back spot. So that's where I'm at with Chelo Weigandt. I feel good about him when he's on the field. Like I'm not thinking he's a huge liability, but I also don't think he's going to win you games in any sort of meaningful way. And I think that's kind of where you have to be at this point heading into 2025.
The good thing is that heading into 2025, we actually will have somebody who's going to be able to challenge him in that right back spot on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
Last year, the problem was that Chelo Weigandt was basically all we had, because even though Ian Frey was, according to me, better player in that right back spot than Chelo Weigandt, he just wasn't consistently available. So Chelo Weigandt was our only option. Now that's not the case anymore. And he's going to have to deal with that level of competition. And the good thing is, if he doesn't perform or if he's under par, we can put Lujan in his place and see what Lujan can do. And that in itself creates, I think, that next step up that Chelo Weigandt needs to take and we want to see him take. And then I think the last thing I'm going to say is, I've already mentioned, he is not a player who's going to miraculously get new abilities. He's very much solid in what he's done. His footballing abilities are in place. Now it's up to the coaching staff to get the best out of him. So if he's put in a position to succeed, I think he can do the bare minimum or what he's asked to do really, really well. That's his, I think, biggest quality. When he's given instructions and asked to do certain things that fit his style, I think he's going to do well. So it's up to the coaching staff to see how much they can get out of him and whether they can allow him to make that next step, either through tactics or his positioning or the role on this team. And hopefully this season we get to see more from him, whether it's defensively or offensively.
Okay, let's talk predictions for 2025. Here's the over-under. Will he start 29 and a half games in 2025? He started 31 last year. He did come in late, but then he basically didn't have any competition, started every game, almost every game for the rest of the season. 29 and a half starts this year. That means he's going to be the standard at right back for much of the season. Over or under, in your opinion?
Out of about 60 games, I would say. If we succeed in all competitions?
50-ish, max.
50-ish.
48, 47, probably more likely.
I want to say, I'll say over, but just barely over. I think just the right amount of games. 29, 30, 31 perhaps.
I'm going to go under. I think Javier Mascherano is going to really like Ian Frey when he gets a chance to see him, but that's just my opinion. So what other expectations? That's our book it over under. We're splitting on this one, but what other expectations do you have from him this year? What are you looking forward to seeing from him?
No, I just want him to do well whenever he's on the pitch. And for me, he needs to get more assists. I know this team has plenty of firepower up top, but there is a lack of balance on that right-hand side. Our attacking play always comes from the left-hand side with Jordi Alba pushing high up and creating opportunities for Messi. But imagine Chelo Weigandt being able to do that on the right side of the pitch as well. There's now a double-pronged attack coming in with Jordi Alba making the cutbacks. But if Chelo Weigandt can do that on the right-hand side and make those cutbacks in, this team is really going to give other defenses a lot to think about. And if you can add that level of offensive firepower on the left-hand side, starting with Chelo Weigandt, we will have a really good season in terms of creating opportunities. So I want him to take a step up and expect him to take a step up offensively, but let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, there was so much space on that right-hand side last year under Tata Martino's system. Very curious to see how this applies in Mascherano's system. I don't think Chelo's going to be asked to do as much going forward, and I think that suits him. I think, like you said, the key word is steady Eddie. I think we're getting steady Eddie Chelo Weigandt this year. I'm expecting a very similar 2025. I think he's going to start less games. I don't think he's going to be our big starter in big moments, but I hope he proves us wrong. Guys, that's it. We'll be back tomorrow. See you in the next one. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.